In 3, 2, 1. Alrighto, welcome everyone back to the Shop Stool Podcast. Hope everyone's well. Joey, how are you? Brian, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yep.
It's good. Ryan,
pretty good.
Brian's.
Yeah, we'll again let people in under the curtain or under the blanket in this case, but it is hosing down with rain, and obviously on the tin roof of the workshop it's pretty loud. So at the minute I am buried under a furniture blanket, creating my own little recording studio.
Do you know, when I first saw you, I thought this has got to be something to do with kids. He's hiding from his kids or something under a blanket.
I thought he was in a tent, actually. It's like,
if a furniture blanket worked to get me to hide from them, I'd be under one all the time at the minute. Okay, just sick kids all the time. Since wood dust, sick kids.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Anyway. But yeah, all good.
Are you and Lani getting it as well? I mean, is it impacting your work, your ability to work?
Lani's got it. I've somehow stayed well the whole time. Dodged COVID at wood dust and dodged whatever stinky daycare viruses they've picked up. But it's impacted me in terms of the amount of time that I can actually spend working. And, getting 4 hours sleep a night isn't really ideal.
Yeah.
One of those things. But pieces are moving. I've got a few things. I've got that dining table's going to go out this week. And a couple of other things. So yeah. Still getting a little bit done.
I saw some of the pictures on Instagram. It looks really... Because we talked about that, was it last show or the show before, about it being a very standard design.
That's
cool.
Yeah. I think, cool there's only so many ways you can do a trestle. I've just tried to make some of the details my own and, trying to work out how to make it as strong as possible. So the connection of the post to the horizontal is what gives the trestle table its strength. So you sort of want that as wide as possible.
Yeah.
But rather than making it a solid piece, I've made it as two timber elements and got a gap between them. So again, just trying to increase the lightness visually of it while still providing the strength. So there's a few tricky details.
That's the hardest thing with that kind of slimline table design.
Yeah.
That connection, which I've typically used like a kind of a sliding dovetail and lowered the rails down into the leg component.
Yeah.
But it's still, I don't even think that's probably the best way to do it. But it's so hard because you just want more and more. You want like 300 mil of depth to really connect the leg to that rail, but you just can't do it because knees and visual and all the other stuff, and it becomes a bit dicey sometimes.
Yeah, it's pretty sturdy. I was standing on top of it the other day, giving it a wobble, and it's good. Like tabletop's attached with big bolts into threaded inserts, and then expansion clips in the middle, and it all seems pretty good. I think what is, apart from the width of the post, like the two post elements, I think it's the depth of the cross member that connects between the two is what's stopping it from racking.
Right.
So I've dialed through that as well, and glued. So it seems to be pretty strong.
Yeah, cool. Because of course the worst thing, and what always happens is after you have a dinner party or something, and we'll just drag the table over here and put it next, and you're like, God, don't drag it.
Yeah.
Well, it's so funny you say that, Joey. Sometimes it gets a bit dicey. If you go online, you will see people putting out furniture that you look at it and you think that's probably going to be a bit wonky. It's standing now, but it's... So where would you draw the line? Because obviously you can make the argument of this is a table, it's not meant to be stood on. And of course, if you have kids running around pulling on it, of course it's going to break. So therefore, I'm just going to have one leg going through the tabletop and call it that. But we all know that if you were to look at it the wrong way, it's going to fall over. So where would you, what's your mark of this is strong enough to give to a client?
Well, we kind of had this conversation with Brian. Is it Yvonne? Who was the lady we had on who was your... shop assistant?
Vivian.
Vivian.
Yeah.
And she was talking to us about these specific piece of furniture that she was commissioned to make, designed by someone who I can't remember, and she was quite excited about it, I believe.
Oh, I know which one. It was the jewellery box for John Wardle, wasn't
very
it?
tall.
On the little skinny legs.
Yeah, very skinny legs. And I remember talking briefly at the time, like, how do you know it's going to stay? Like, I mean, what's going to happen? Because this thing is probably just going to twist or warp or something. The legs are way too long proportionally, and it's an artistic decision, so that's fine. This is getting off topic a bit, Robin, but we're good at that. But I have wanted to bring this up with you guys before, and it seems like a good time. Is that so that kind of piece that she made went into design, got some kind of design award, or was entered into some kind of competition as a piece of furniture, I believe. But at what point does that, because it's not really functional, you could probably put some jewelry in that box, but like if you're going to pull the drawer out, the whole thing topples over because it's so top heavy and so tall and spindly and the legs twist. Like, is it furniture or is it a piece of art? And like, it's really interesting. In last year or the year before, the Maker of the Year awards, was it Maker of the Year? The Australian competition. I think one of the winning designs was like this chair with like strings or something.
The filament.
Across it. And it's like, okay, is that art or is that a piece of furniture? Because I'm not sitting on that for more than 2 seconds. So like, it's a weird, and it's probably maybe a whole different topic, whole another discussion for us to have. But I always wonder, like, at what point does it stop becoming functional furniture, and you're really looking at a piece of like 3-dimensional art that isn't actually practical anymore, and it's like so uber furniture that it's beyond usability.
I guess it's threefold. It's trying to be art, furniture, but it's also trying to be craft. So if there was a particular technique or something that went into making it, even if it is, a bit of, like, say it's lacking in the practicalities, I can still appreciate it as a piece of furniture design. So yeah, I don't know. Like I always say to clients, like if it's a hallway piece or something that can be slightly lighter and skinnier, and I always ask them, have they got kids? Have they got pets? Things like that. Is it going to be climbed on? Because I think you can start to sort of blur the lines of practicality a little bit. Like if you look at my pinch bench that I do, the original version with the cylinder is connected to the piece with a threaded rod. So it's really sturdy. Like if you sit right on the corner, you'll feel it start to rock, but it's really sturdy. But then the version that I do with the World War II shell as the leg, it comes down to a point. Right. So that's not designed to be a coffee table. That's meant to be an art piece. It could be in a hallway or something like that. You can still, hang magazines in it, but it's meant to be a piece of art. So I guess for me, I think usage comes into it a lot, and I think a dining table. I mean, I don't know what your dinner parties are like, but mine used to have people dancing on tables. So I think every dining table should be dance proof.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So it's really a part of your assessment. So when you meet with the client, that's a bunch of questions, which I guess is it's a good and a bad thing, because from the good perspective, you are finding that out and that's influencing your design. Great. From the bad perspective, you are also taking onus of, I am certifying it for these scenarios, which I guess you take that on the chin. But that's a good way to do it.
It's probably my background in architecture and having had an interest in engineering. I think it's better to slightly over-engineer something than under-engineer it. And that requires a whole lot more time and a whole lot more thought. But I still haven't had a piece returned to me that's failed in 11 years. Yeah. So I take that as proof that my approach is working for me. It might not work for other people, but I think you should incorporate things around load and structure when you're designing it, but also when you're thinking about the types of joinery you're using, the types of glue you're using, expansion. Like, it's multifold. It's not just the design of it. I'm going to make skinny legs because it's not going to be climbed on much, or I'm going to make thick legs because it needs to take a pounding. I think it has to be really multidisciplinary between art, engineering, design, all those kind of things. Anyway.
Talking about racking legs, I've just finished my workbench. Well, I'm calling it a workbench. It's not really. It's more of an assembly table.
Yeah.
It's funny. I look back at the conversation that we had a couple months ago where I was talking about building my first one and how I was struggling with it, but I'm finally there. I've got something to put things on and a little bit of storage to store things in. It's exciting. But I tried building... So the long rails, there's 2 long rails, and they're like, I think they're about 80 mil wide, a top and a middle one. So it's quite rigid when you push it in, lengthway orientation. I thought I'd skimp out on the short rail because it'll be fine. Wow, it makes a difference having that middle rail in versus not in, because when you push it on the short rail, I actually ended up going back and putting a big plywood panel on it.
Yeah, I was going to say just do an infill panel and try to stiffen it.
Just to give it some shear strength, because it's massive. And it's quite interesting because you figure these things out with your shop furniture, and now going forward into client work, I will have that in the back of my mind always. If there's any shear force on this table, it's got to have multiple rails, or as you say, Joe, a 300 rail on the top,
a big deep rail or something. That's an interesting point, because often you see dining tables with the legs at the end of the rectangular shaped table will be joined with a lower rail. And then there'll be nothing between the length of the table, which is great. It can work. Or you'll have a table with low rails at each end, connecting the legs down by the floor, and then maybe a central, like a footrest kind of rail that connects the feet down low, which is a good way of bracing the whole design. But when you see sometimes tables that have nothing, it's just the skirt, like a traditional table, and you start going, wow, you put the same 2 types of table and through like a torture test, and it's pretty obvious to see which one's going to last. But
Yep. That's why I actually really like pedestal. I like pedestal tables. I think they're super strong when you make them right, and they also allow for really flexible seating configuration. You can squeeze you can squeeze an extra seat onto it, and you don't have legs impacting where people are sitting. Oh yeah. I know what you mean, though. You got to like the weight considerations on big tables like that, where there are no stretchers or lower rails or anything connecting them. Like, I think then you start to have to move to things like torsion tops to try to reduce the weight of it, allow you to put direct fixings in rather than expansion fixings, things like that. Yeah. Anyway, Robin, you've got some shiny new tools, which probably aren't so shiny or new anymore, but...
Do you know, the first thing I put through it was so as I mentioned, I've just made this workbench. It's out of some old 2x4s that I had kicking around. And I ran these through my machines, this brand new 8-inch jointer, parallelogram tables, spiral head, got it from TimberCon. It's a Sherwood. It's their top of the line jointer. And I was running my boards through, and I looked down and I went, oh, shit, what is that? When the boards were sitting on my workshop floor, they've obviously picked up a stone.
Oh, no.
And now my shiny new tools have this gouge straight through the thicknesser and on the jointer. And obviously it doesn't affect the performance, but it's just so ugly to look at, this big gouge.
That's a good learning lesson, because, I mean, I still do it. Every time I get a load of timber, I dump it on the floor in the workshop, and inevitably it picks up small stones, which then go through and smash my blades. So, it's a good lesson, perhaps, not to put your timber that right on the floor.
That would be the more important thing. Did you damage the blade or just the top?
Well, the jointer, presumably, it would have hit one of the teeth.
Yeah.
Because the scratch was on the table. So, but the thicknesser, the scratch was also on the table. So the thicknesser should be all right. I haven't noticed it, though. So I haven't noticed any gouges in the timber. But again, maybe I just haven't noticed it. I've been building a workbench, so it's not like I am. Doesn't have to be pristine. But I guess the beauty with the spiral head is it'll be a case of changing out a couple of the knives, and that's it.
Yep.
So, but yeah, so they're both 3 horsepower. It's a 16-inch thicknesser. Getting these in, what an experience that was. So luckily, Mark Dana from Dana Made, he popped around to help me with the jointer, which was a case of picking up these 2 tables. We sort of made a 2x4. When you think about someone like a prince, and he's sitting on top of like a throne on people's shoulders. Yeah. We built one of those so we could lift it up, put it on, and pull the sticks out, because that table, those cast iron tables, 120 kilos in this thin profile piece. It's such a new experience for me, picking up weight like that. I've just never had to move that type of thing. And then the thicknesser was it was pre-built straight out of the factory, 250 kilos.
Yeah.
Get it from the
one piece, fully assembled.
Basically fully assembled, like things like the handles I had to put on, but basically fully assembled. So I had to get an engine lift, an engine hoist to get it down. Kudos to the delivery driver who dropped it off and managed to get it in, because that was.
What's your access like to your basement? Do you directly off your driveway? Or?
Yeah, so the driveway, it's a one of those pink granite driveways. So it's dirt. Then there's a bit of a slope. It drops about half a meter over about a 2 meter length. There's like a dip. So that slope was a bit of a concern. Then there's over a bit of a concrete hump to get into the workshop. You can see how fun this is. And then the actual workshop door it's an external door, 820 door. So luckily I was able to get the engine hoist in. And this is why I say this has been one of the reasons why I haven't gone the table saw route.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to then have to get that table saw out once it's assembled. It's got to be able to come out assembled. Oh
man.
But it's been wild setting up the tools, because obviously you get them and you've got to tweak them. I don't know, do you guys have parallelogram jointer, or have you used it?
Yeah, I do.
A million times easier than the dovetail ways. You've got these eccentric bearings, a few tweaks here, and it was so nice. My old jointer was,
I think that's what
the
mine
dovetails.
is.
And admittedly, it was an old, beat-up machine. So I would make adjustments and cross fingers. That was the best I could do. Whereas this one, I would make the adjustment and I would see it happening. I'd see it working, which is such a dream. Then the thickness, the only thing I had to change out of the gate was the roller, the rollers.
Oh, that's right. They were they were leaving imprints in the timber for shallow
massive
passes.
imprints.
Yeah.
So I
was
pulled
that
them
after
way
like
up.
a heavy plane? Because like my thicknesser, my thicknesser will leave the roller imprint if you take like less than half a mil. Like there's a certain amount it's not enough. But we always leaving an imprint after like a mil or 2 mil cut.
Yeah, it seemed so. Presumably, the outfeed roller is a little bit less. So the infeed's picking it up, gouging it, it's then cutting it, and then on the outfeed, it's fine. So if you take 2 mil, you don't see it, but it's only when you do a really light pass.
Has your outfeed roller got the spiral kind of teeth on it as well?
I assume so. I haven't actually looked. I only looked at the infeed, which does. You can feel it.
I would have thought usually the outfeed roller is mechanically geared like everything else, but smooth. So otherwise it would.
Oh, maybe it is. Maybe
otherwise
that's
you'd be
why.
leaving all marks all over it. But.
Okay, yeah. So that makes sense why it doesn't do it on the way out. But yeah, so I've just eased off on the infeed. But yeah, so that was pretty much. It's as square as it needs to be. For what I'm doing, but I'm sure it'll get tweaked over time.
Cool.
So then got it all plumbed up, and now, I went from trying to dress joinery or dress timber on my edge sander and drum sander, and my dust bag filling up maybe a mil or two in a day, to I literally got these machines, did my workbench, and my dust bag was full. I had to empty it.
Yep.
This is now.
Build it up.
This is where you're going to get into the habit of kind of resawing down to near your stock size. You know, if it's, say, you buy 40 mil timber and you want it to be 30 mil, like take 5-6 mil off with a bandsaw, or if you have a table saw, and then let it sit for a day and then do the jointing. Like the difference that 5 mil passes can make across 10, 15 boards, like it'll be a bag full. And then you've got to dispose of the bag, whereas with small offcuts and things, you can obviously just burn them or give them away as firewood or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are all set up. I am super busy. It's so cool to be able to say that again. Not necessarily. I feel like I've got a lot of things in the works. So I'm finishing up. So I finished up this. I talked to you guys about the celery top shop. That's my new project. I bought the domain. I've started on the websites. I've started getting some pictures together. I've built the first project, or the first product, which is those cookbook stands. They're all set up, ready to go. I've just got to turn them on the website. So that's ready to start making some money. The YouTube video for it is 80% complete. So that's, again, it's there, but it's not actually generating any income yet. The tools, and I haven't spoken about this yet, those tools that I got them through TimberCon. It was part of a deal. So I've got to make some video or do some video work for TimberCon to essentially recoup that cost. So I've got 6 videos to do for them. One of them I'm just about to complete today. So again, it's not money coming in, but it's money that, to work that has to be done. So I feel like I've got all these projects that are sort of ticking along, and then once they're complete, hopefully then that money will start coming in. Because what I go into in the YouTube video is essentially I'm tapped out of money at the moment. I'm just scraping by on the business account. So all of these things I'm putting in place to hopefully, when they all, when the starter pistol fires and they all get going, hopefully that money will start to come back in. But for the minute, I just feel like I'm just working. I'm working for nothing. It's just for fun.
Oh, that sounds like me.
It's funny. I was chatting to Adam Markowitz about it the other day, and he said there was a survey done by the Victorian Woodworkers Association where they went around different businesses asking them what their strong points are, what they're struggling with, and everybody's busy and nobody's making money.
Yeah,
and they're trying to get to the bottom of why. And I was thinking, it's probably down to the fact that we're all wanting to make different things all the time.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Trying to do custom pieces, the amount of extra time, like your workshop hours are fairly fixed, like especially if you've got kids, a family or whatever, or you can't work evenings in your workshop, like due to noise. You've got a set number of hours, and the second you take on custom work, that's not a set number of hours anymore. You've got so much time doing prototyping, doing all that kind of stuff. Like maybe we all should focus more on a range of products as opposed to taking on bespoke work, and then let clients know that if you want bespoke work, it's not 2 times more, it's 4 times more.
I was just going to say, it's like you've got to triple or quadruple your price. I'm right in that right now.
It's one thing making like a set of built-in plywood shelves or MDF shelves or something like that, but if it's making a dining table to a client's design that you don't know, like again going back to that idea of structure, and you have to test these things and the onus is on you. So we, as furniture makers, I think we take pride in that, which means that we spend a shitload of time on it.
Yeah, I'm just about to get on to, well, I say just about to. I need to get on to building a outdoor dining table, which is 2.7 by 1.2. So it's a good size table.
Big monster, yeah.
And I priced this up a couple months ago. And now the timber for it, the ladies said, can you just give me 2 months to sort my finances and then we'll go for it. So she came back to me and said, right, let's go. Here's the money. Fine. Now the timber for it has just not doubled, but the cost of the materials has just gone through the roof. Mainly
since you first spoke to her,
since I quoted the job, And
Yeah, right.
the problem isn't that the timber itself has gone up. It's that the specific pieces of timber I was going to use have sold out the specific lengths. And now I've got to get shorter pieces and get way more of them to make up the pieces I need and have more waste. And so the job's just one of those ones where I was looking forward to it, and now I'm like, fuck, I just need to get it done because the money's just being smashed by the cost of the materials itself. And it's just...
So you absorb the difference?
I can't charge you more just because the timber stock is different from when I first quoted it, because like I say, the timber itself has not gone up. The availability of that specific timber that would have been ideal is now gone. So
it's increased the amount of labor that you have to do on it, but the material cost doesn't
labor
change.
And materials, yeah. So I went from buying 4 lengths of timber to 7.
Okay.
And so you're like, okay.
So there's added waste and...
Added waste is mainly what it is, because of the lengths are shitty, because it's 2.7 long, this table, and so everything's either 2.4 or in this case, I'm having to buy 4 meter lengths, and I can't get, my offcut from a 2.7 is horrendous. And so you're like, okay.
How long did you say it was between when she
2 months
you gave her the quote in?
Yeah.
So do you not have an expiration on your quote? So normally 28 days or a month.
I haven't actually written out an official quote form for so long.
I would usually do 90 as my thing,
90
but
days.
again, that's in the past. Whereas now timber does fluctuate in price in 3 months.
Definitely
I guess
for kitchens.
For the plywood.
If I'm doing cabinetry, I'm like, this price is for this week, because all the different components of cabinetry can change. Like even just the cost of paint goes up and down, and timber and what's available. Like sometimes if I just want like plywood material to build carcasses for cabinets, it's just not available. It's just not in the country. And I say, well, do you want to wait 3 months for it to come in on the boat, or do you want to use a different product? Okay, different product, double the price. I was like, so you've got to keep having the conversations. I've not really come across that too much with actual solid timber furniture. It tends to be, I've allowed enough. In this case, it's just bit me in the butt a bit, and I'm just going to take it on and get
I guess this is going to play into our conversation that we've been having offline from the show about timber and what's happening in Australia at the minute. I said we didn't want to dwell too much on it today because we are going to cover it in a special episode. But yeah, I'm still trying to get my head around, not only from a business perspective, but from a moral perspective and a sustainability thing, because these are important things to me. Exactly why a native logging ban has come in the way it has done, and what are going to be the knock-on effects. Like, I don't think... Like, it's not going to stop the supply of timber for things like furniture making, but the price is going to go through the roof. It's definitely going to affect the building trade more than us.
Why do you say it won't affect the furniture industry? And it will affect us from a cost perspective, but I think that there is enough agroforestry at the minute with mature trees that farmers will harvest that you can get decent quality lengths of hardwood timber. But yeah, the cost is going to go up. It's just from a supply-demand perspective. So like you say, we've been talking backwards and forwards behind the scenes fairly a bit about this and trying to work out how we're going to put it into one kind of succinct podcast that hopefully gives both sides of the story and as much information accurately as we can. So for now...
The both sides of the story thing is so important because I don't feel as though anybody is covering it. Like, the media here are purely taking the line from government and then they're going and interviewing loggers who have been put out of work.
Yeah.
Like, they're not actually examining why the sustainability is, like why are we taking this advice and what exactly is the advice other than there's sugar gliders and, we got to protect the forest.
I feel like
it's going to be an interesting one.
It's what I'm quite interested in, and I don't know that it's completely comparable, but given the situation here at NZ, where the effective native logging ban has been since 1989, I think it was, I looked into, or even maybe earlier actually, we're like decades ahead of what Australia is proposing to do now. And I feel like you guys could look over the ditch and see what the future could be, which is not great. You know, like I can't get...
We've spoken about the pine plantations before as well in New Zealand, and like lack of biodiversity and all that kind of stuff. Sorry, you can't get...
Because I can't get natives, like you were saying just before. I think there's going to be enough for now, which is correct. But if the government goes on the angle which we feel like they're proposing, you probably won't be able to get them. Or like,
well, probably the difference between Australia and New Zealand timbers is the speed at which they grow. So like a eucalypt, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to be corrected by timber experts, but like a black butt or something like that will grow to a harvestable level of growth in like 30 years.
Yes.
Whereas a Rimu or Kauri or something like that, it just doesn't do that.
I mean, this is massive to the conversation, is that there's a huge nuance, and lay people can't have the time or whatever to grasp what we're talking about. Like a totara, for example, is a 800 to 900 year old tree. At its like peak size. There's no way you can make a plantation of it, and 3 generations still aren't going to be able to chop that tree down. So there's no money, no monetary incentive to want to go down that road unless it's purely conservation. But then you are taking land from, presumably, someone's got to donate that land to be planted out and never be touched for a century or more.
So you're relying on philanthropy.
And there's a lot of it. There's a lot of philanthropy that I've been reading about, farmers converting and buying up massive sections of land and converting it into anything but pine.
I've heard about this as well.
And the problem here now is that there's this whole argument that exotic trees aren't going to count as part of the ETS, which is the emissions trading scheme, which is the whole carbon credits thing. And they're talking
when you're saying exotics, you're meaning like radiata pine, right?
Yeah, anything that's not essentially native. New Zealand native timbers. So pine. Oh, no, pine has an exemption, sorry. Because it's fast growing and you can get the yield. It does make sense, because pine, from a production point of view, makes sense because it's very fast growing and you can pulp it and you can make framing timber out of it, and it is really renews quite quickly. That's not to say it's good for that particular part of the environment. It's a good business case for what the government's trying to push. But if you want to plant slightly longer to grow trees but have a better hardwood and a better yield, like better girth, etc., straighter logs, from what it sounds like, those trees aren't going to be accepted as part of the carbon credit system, and so there's no incentive to grow them.
It's such a nuanced conversation. Like, so one simple post on Instagram, and I think I got more comments on that post than I have done in 11 years of running a fucking Instagram account. I had every perspective. I had people calling me a tree murderer. I had people saying, there was the whole conspiracy theorist thing about the Great Reset. Everything occurred in that feed, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm literally just saying, what is the advice that has led to this? Like, and what are we going to do? What's the plan? Like, it doesn't feel as though there is a plan here, and that's the most disheartening thing about it to me. It's like there was a 6-year hiatus where they were going to gradually fade it out, and even 6 years, like if you're looking at trees that take 25 to 30 years to come to maturity, 6 years is not enough. But to go, okay, we're going to do 6 years, and then 6 months later go, oh no, it's actually going to happen next year. It just seems madness to me.
Was that 6 years to do with improving on the research and potentially improving the way they're going to roll it out, or was that just I think it was
I think it was to try to establish plantations at least and improve on agroforestry, and also retrain a lot of the people that have worked in forestry and logging to then work in tourism industries. But there's so much of the forest here that is going to be inaccessible for tourists, and you don't want tourists in. And you look at how much of that forest was actually inaccessible for logging anyway. Like, I don't know. Like I said, we're gonna have to try to find. Like, I've obviously got a few people that have contacted me from the timber industry who are willing to present their perspective, but I want to hear from an environmentalist. I want to hear from a real professional on like what the benefit to the forest is. Like beyond the obvious things. Like for me, I always, like the simple thing from my architecture training was source local materials, reduce your carbon footprint that way, and also carbon sequestering. So the fact that trees sequester carbon a lot faster in their first 15 to 20 years, their big growth period. Yeah. So if you can cut that down, make it into something useful, housing, furniture that's going to last a long time and not release that carbon through a bushfire or through rotting or something like that. I thought that was the argument, but it seems to have gone out the window.
Well, what you said there with the 15 to 20 years is why they're pushing for the pine plantations, because that's about when you can start felling them. Whereas if you're taking something like beech or ash, oaks, they do the same CO2 sequestering for the same 15 to 20 years. And after that, when they're still maturing, they could still mature for another 30 years. But they're not sequestering anything like that amount of carbon, and so there's an argument to say, well, why plant them in the first place? Let's just monocrop the whole lot.
Yeah,
which is an awful predicament for wildlife.
Yeah,
because nothing grows in a pine.
And that's the thing that we're looking to protect by these bans. So it's like.
You should probably also clarify here, we're not necessarily... Well, I mean, Bryan, you've made it quite clear that you have a stance that you believe is right, but we are also trying to...
I still want to be educated on it,
and make
Robin.
it an educated decision. Yeah. So if the current status quo has merits, we want to hear them just so we can make a more informed decision. We're not trying to demonize one side yet.
Absolutely.
Yep. And 100%. If you gave me the choice of, I want to know where my timber comes from. That's why I go to certain yards, because I know that they can trace. If you gave me timber that I could actually afford, that came from a certain farm, and I know that he's felling one of those trees in that day, and that tree is mine, all that kind of stuff, I'm totally fine with it. But I want to know the wider knock-on effects of that will suit me. But the building industry is now going to rely on hardwood timber coming from overseas. Like, it's not just like pine does not just cut it. Like, in New Zealand, you use Merbau for your decking and things like that.
Yeah.
So brilliant. So we're just going to decimate Indonesia, Malaysia, Papua New Guinea instead
Fiji.
of trying to manage the problem. Fiji, instead of trying to manage the problem on our own shores. And I find it incredibly neglectful and just a bit sad that people think that this is a green approach, but they're not looking at the larger picture of the
big
whole thing.
picture.
Yeah.
Well,
so like I said, I don't think it's not going to put furniture makers out of business necessarily, but the wider knock-on effects of trying to have decent, sustainable practices. Like how many years ago did I start Tree Maker? 2018,
that's right.
I think.
Yep.
So I plant 1% of my revenue goes towards planting trees. So I will have planted, for every one tree I've used, I would guess somewhere between 30 and 40 trees.
Yeah.
Something like that. So there's schemes like that. And, if the government think that they can manage schemes like that, put that tax on businesses and we can pass it on to our clients.
That's actually not a bad idea, to have a scheme where if you're a business who is consuming timber goods, surely just give back a little bit, and for however many thousands of dollars worth of timber products, you plant 5 trees.
Yeah,
and that's like a mandatory thing.
When we were talking about carbon credits and things like that, and you're basically having to buy poor ethical practices or something like that, you're paying cash. It's who is managing that cash and how are they managing it. It's the transparency
I agree with you. Sorry, I cut you off.
No.
I had a real hard time with the carbon credits. I want someone to explain to me how it actually works. Because in my layman's view of it, you've got, let's say, a dirty old factory in the Northern Territory is producing whatever they do and producing as much carbon as they like. And you've got some nice forests down in Tasmania. Mm-hmm. And the dirty factory buys as many credits as he wants to keep producing as much carbon as he likes without changing any business practices.
Yeah, that's it. And where it gets really sick is you can now go onto the ASX and buy shares in those carbon credits, which will become a very lucrative industry in 20, 30 years because there's a finite amount of those credits. So they will just increase in value. So it's now not only are we doing what you're talking about, Joey, where we're not actually improving businesses. We're now turning this entire thing into an investment scenario, where again money is the bottom line. Not how do we improve the environment. It's about making a profit.
So in my little example just there, where you've got factory on one side of the continent and forest on the other, I'd like someone to explain if it's even possible. In my layman's mind, I think, well, if you've got a dirty old factory, isn't it better to have the forest right next to the dirty old factory, and it might catch some of the carbon that it's producing? If they're hundreds of thousands of kilometers apart, are we actually even doing anything? Or is it just a purely numbers game?
It's just a tokenistic thing because
is it just
ultimately China and India, the developing world, is going to produce infinitely more carbon and not have the funds or the interests to deal with it at the minute.
Yeah. So it's a massive thing. Like I feel like the wool's being pulled over our eyes to a certain extent, or just not explained at all.
Yeah. So if anybody knows somebody that works in
I was just about to say
forestry science or a university or anything like that can come on and talk to us, we'd love to talk to them. And like I said, we want to be educated on it.
So even if it's the unpopular
we're all flexible.
decision.
100%. We don't want it to be an echo chamber. So like I said, we've got people from the timber industry that are willing to talk to us, but we want to have both sides of the story. So get in touch with us on Instagram, hit the Shop Stool Podcast Instagram and send me a message if you can present the sustainability, environmental side of things of why this ban was necessary and how it's going to be implemented. Or not necessarily how it's going to be implemented, but what's the next step to providing sustainable harvesting of timber in this country.
Yeah.
Either that or, I'd love to see all the politicians that have made the decision, what are they going to do when they need a new deck?
Yeah.
We need to get one of the MPs on the podcast. You reckon we can make that happen?
I'd say there is sweet fuck all chance of that happening. Would be my guess. But again, this shows you, these are decisions that are long-term things for the future, for our kids' and grandkids' future. But when you have political terms that, globally last between 3-4 years, or if you're Russia, 20 years, but they're short terms, so you need to get the small wins in and then let future generations try to work out how that policy is implemented. Whereas this needs to be non-partisan. It has to be across all parties, and it has to be presented with real, genuine scientific evidence of and even if it's a ban for a year, do a test ban and see what happens to these areas. Do they regenerate? Are there alternative sources of timber that we can find? What happens to the price of it from an economic perspective? Because there's going to be so many builders that are shitting themselves at the minute. People that quoted on jobs, 6 months ago, thinking that, we're guaranteed native timber. Of course, it's going to gradually creep up in price like everything in a cost of living crisis. But they're quoting on jobs saying we can get this timber, whereas in 18 months, 2 years' time, maybe they can't get the quantity of timber that they need. So yeah, it's going to be a fascinating conversation. I think we really should do a proper deep dive into it. Rather than trying to do a 40-minute episode, we want to be covering all aspects of this, and like I don't know. I mean, like a mini documentary or something like that.
It might be a 3 or 4 parter or something. Okay.
Yeah. But we wanted to showcase everything.
Yep.
All right. So now that we've talked about that thing that we're not going to talk about for
that was only 20 minutes talking about the thing that we weren't going to talk about.
One thing I do want to touch on before we wrap up, and I've been meaning to talk about this for a number of episodes, but because of the whole wood dust thing and interviewing guests, it's been hard to get to it. But we are seeing a growing number of people donating to the show, and I'm not going to mention names because I mean, maybe these people want to be mentioned, maybe they don't. I don't know. So I'm just going to err on the side of caution. But we do see you all donating to the show. Obviously, it's a massive thank you. Some of that money went into our wood dust event that helped to make that happen. So we are using that money back into the show. We are putting it back into the show. And I just wanted to take a second to say thank you to everyone who donates either a single donation. We've got a few repeats as well. So yeah, just a very big thank you. We really do appreciate all that money coming in.
Absolutely. That's very cool of you. If you feel like you want to part with your hard-earned cash so I can dribble on for 45 minutes.
Supporting Joey's angry client stories. But it is a cool thing. And we said, we don't want a Patreon for this podcast. We don't want to put people under financial pressure. We don't want anything behind a paywall. But, it's just that thing. If you want to donate to us the cost of a coffee or the cost of a pint or something like that, it's really appreciated because we do put a lot of work into making the show happen and getting the guests that we get on. And as much as we love it, sometimes it's hard work, like especially at the minute we're recording during our working day.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
I believe we've got another international guest coming up, and I think I'm going to have to be in here recording at a ridiculous time. So that's going to be fun.
That's 2 weeks from now we are going to have a famous face. That's a familiar face too. Cool.
So yes, the donation link is in the Instagram account. If you click on the links, the link tree will take you to the donation link. It's there. No pressure, but it's there.
Yeah. Cool. Righto, guys. That was
guys.
A good one. Yeah, and just to reiterate what Bryan said, if you know anyone who you think would be interested in this conversation or have some value, please let us know because we do really want to get some people involved. But otherwise, I'll let you guys get back to your day. And
cheers.
We will talk again in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Very good.
Catch you guys soon.
See ya.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye.